Hello, fellow beings of light, and welcome to episode 15 of our podcast. If you've been paying attention this week, you probably noticed that the accompanying activation for this episode was actually released on Thursday in connection with the spring equinox, before it instead of after it, as it usually is. There were two reasons for that. One, to allow you to open yourself fully for what will be shared in this and the coming episodes. So go back and watch the activation first, if you haven't already. And two, to allow the activation for this episode to blend together with our spring equinox activation. I'm not going to tell you why or how. I did that in the activation. So again, go back and watch it first if you haven't already. I'm going to go ahead and assume that you have already watched it, or that you paused this episode to watch it and are now back with me so that we can move forward. This episode is the kickoff to our theme for the first half of spring, release. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Isn't that the same thing as reset, our theme for the first half of winter? No, it is not. When we reset in terms of our journeys to remembrance and reawakening, what we are doing is beginning to ask questions, beginning to open ourselves up to new perspectives, new states of being, and more. Once we do so, we can begin the process of releasing. We can release what no longer resonates, what is no longer in alignment with who and what we are, what is no longer in alignment with our soul's purpose and the path that we are on. Or, in the case of this episode, and likely those that are going to follow it, we are releasing our perspective on separation and duality, seeing it as the illusion that it is, and re-embracing polarity. For the first half of spring, we will have yet another set of sub-themes, another set of 3 C's, but this time around, they are actions to take instead of concepts to embrace or reconsider. Cleanse, challenge, and celebrate. Now, joining us for today's episode, or rather for all 3 of the C's, will be the divine masculine and the divine feminine who stepped forward for the activation, as well as the combined young Sanat Kumara and his fellow soul aspect currently incarnated on Earth in the even younger Tay. They appear kind of as one for me. They will each have a role to play within this episode and those that follow it. So let's go ahead and get into it. The concept of polarity is once again going to be center stage today, but my team and I are very much aware that the examples that we have provided thus far require large shifts in your perspectives, large leaps in your journey, and the majority of you are not quite there yet, not quite ready. Because of that, we are going back to basics today, back to the very first instance of polarity, back to the original illusion of separation, the original creation of source beyond itself, the first experiment, if you like, the divine masculine and the divine feminine, which you can go ahead and reference them as the divine father and the divine mother if you prefer. That's totally fine. The 3 together create the true form of what many religions and beyond refer to as the Trinity. Source, the center and balancing point, separated itself into 2 opposing extremes along its unique frequency, the divine masculine in one direction and the divine feminine in the other. Together, the three are one, part of the same whole. They exist along the same single frequency, but at the same time also possess an illusion of separation that allows them to represent variations in thoughts, emotions, and experiences along that same single frequency that is source, and in turn, all that is us, because we are one with source as well. We all possess that source frequency within us at our core, and thus all possess the opposing extremes along its frequency, aspects of the divine masculine and the divine feminine within us, aspects and variation that we have been given the free will, the freedom of choice to slide up and down and spend time up and down one side of the frequency or the other in any given moment, but always returning to our center, to our balance point, to source. At least that was and is what was intended by the illusion of separation, of the illusion of duality, and the ability to create beyond oneself that illusion facilitates. That is not what has been or what is the reality above, though. And for far too long, that has not been the reality here below on Earth. Not to make light of it, but we had one job, one purpose, to be the universe's do-over when the divine masculine and the divine feminine finally realized the illusion, acknowledged it, and the truth of their oneness with each other. To be the universe's second attempt to create beyond them and have their creations experience the illusion of separation and contrasting thoughts, emotions, and experiences to create with and from them, and to see and acknowledge all of it for what it is, an illusion, to all return to the center balance point, to oneness, instead of getting stuck along one extreme or the other, being forever imbalanced, to connect with and reawaken our light bodies with this knowledge, this shift, so that they can share it with all above, so they can shift as well, see and acknowledge the illusion of separation, return to the center balance point, to oneness, to source, so we can all collectively reclaim, step into, and embody our true oneness as one. Now, our taking so long to do so, to embody and step into these things and to begin reawakening our light bodies, that's not completely our fault. So don't feel that way at all. There was and is interference in the experiment codes, templates, and blueprints used, as well as the separation ones, the ascension ones, all of them. And that interference is blocking and delaying our progress and attempts. We've gotten into that in other episodes and activations, so I won't be getting into it here. But the important part is that we are getting there, slowly but surely, despite that interference. And we should be proud of that. I'm getting off track a bit, or rather ahead of myself maybe. Back to basics, right? Back to the first instance of polarity. back to the original illusion of separation, the original creation of source beyond itself. All of us possessing equal aspects of the divine masculine and the divine feminine within us. That shouldn't be too large of a shift in perspective or a leap for you to make, since there are numerous other channels out there, other videos, courses, and more that teach the same exact thing. The only difference you will find here today in this episode and those that will follow it is my team and I asking you to recognize and acknowledge that concept from a perspective of polarity, from the perspective of the divine masculine and the divine feminine being opposing extremes of the same single frequency that is source. A frequency that you can navigate farther and closer from one extreme to the other at will and return to center, to balance at will. You can picture it, polarity as a scale, if you'd like. Sometimes we lean further towards the masculine, sometimes further towards the feminine, and sometimes, or hopefully most of the time, the two are balanced in alignment with the center point of source. Now, to help facilitate that, you, me, Sanat, and Tay are going to call in all of our inner children right now for these episodes and our work within them. The purest, the most whole versions of ourselves before the illusion of separation began to take hold and become our reality, courtesy of the interference and its effect on the world around us. The closest to source within us, to source consciousness we have ever been and will ever be in each new incarnation and cycle of forgetting, until we fully embrace, embody, and step into all of who and what we are, all of our purpose, all of our connection to everyone and everything. I want you to approach and consider all that follows from the perspective of that inner child, your inner child, from that version of yourself. And if you watched the accompanying activation, our spring equinox activation, then this should be easy for you. Yeah, I'm kind of looking at those of you who continued with this episode without watching it. You know who you are. Approach and consider this episode and those that follow from that version of yourself so that you can re-experience the divine masculine and the divine feminine within yourself, so that you can re-experience that original separation, so that you can re-experience that the intention of that separation was for it to be nothing more than an illusion from which all creations and experiences could further create an experience from. So that you can truly understand that first instance of polarity and begin to carry that knowledge forward into everything, into all aspects of yourself, whether it is specific thoughts, emotions, or experiences, and then into all aspects of the world around you, everyone and everything. Can you do that? I hope so. For this episode, let's start out with re-experiencing the divine masculine and the divine feminine, or the divine father and the divine mother. Those aspects of each and every one of us and the role they play in our day-to-day life and in our overall journey in terms of polarity. How they represent opposing extremes of each other for us to navigate across, back and forth, as well as find balance in the in-between. When it comes to the mental aspect of our being, the divine masculine represents our knowledge, our inner reasoning and logic when it comes to thought processes, decisions, and more, while the divine feminine represents our intuition, our inner knowing or gut instinct when it comes to the same. The balance, the in between, comes from both aspects, operating from the basis of our inner truths, our core, what we know, what we can trust, what is in alignment with who and what we are, and our purpose. Approaching thought processes and decisions from a place where we honor our inner truths in the form of intuitively knowing what is in alignment and what is not, and act upon what is or isn't from a place of integrated and grounded in knowledge and logical reasoning when it comes to those inner truths. When it comes to the emotional aspect of our being, the divine masculine represents our ability to protect ourselves and our state of being, our ability to set and enforce boundaries with ourselves and with others, to temporarily hold in emotions or adopt coping mechanisms until a later point in time when it comes to them. While the divine feminine represents our ability to let go, to surrender, and feel the full weight of our emotions, as well as empathize with, nurture, and hold space for those around us. The balance, the in between, comes from both aspects operating from a basis of self awareness, the awareness that our emotions are temporary, passing, and do not define us, and that the same applies to everyone else. The awareness that we can both honor our emotions and others at the same time without losing anything in terms of our inner truths, of who and what we are, of what our purpose is. Emotions do not and cannot change those things. And yes, that self-awareness is based on your inner truths. Start catching on to that theme happening here. When it comes to the experiencing everything and everyone part, the world around us, the divine masculine represents our ability to act, to do, and to give from a foundation that is our inner truth, who and what we are, what our purpose and mission is, often taking into account not only the present, but the past and the future as well. While the divine feminine represents our ability to receive, again, to let go and surrender, to trust from a foundation that is our inner truths, be in the present moment, and to go with the flow of what is. The balance, the in-between, comes from both aspects operating from a basis of equality, of oneness, and understanding formed from that perspective that we are operating on a basis of mutual exchange, that we both receive, let go, and then give, act, or vice versa, give, act, and then receive, let go at the same exact time or close enough to it. And understanding that receiving and giving are not mutually exclusive, that there's always an exchange of energy, of time, of money, of something else, and that we should be intentional when it comes to both. Come on, guys. I hate to say it again through this podcast because science, it really isn't my thing. But this is all physics, quantum physics. For each and every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. When two objects, two people interact, they exert forces on each other that are equal in magnitude and opposite in direction. They give and receive at the same time. Now, apply that to each of those examples so far, and all of the ones that I'm not including here when it comes to the divine masculine and the divine feminine. And beyond that, to every thought, emotion, and experience created from those aspects of us. Because that is what my team and I are ultimately trying to get you to do. The frequency that is source that we are trying to bring you either back down to or up to. That bit of physics, it both stems from and provides the foundation for polarity, how it should function when we see and acknowledge separation, duality for what it is, an illusion created so that we could in turn create, experience variation and contrast, experience sovereignty, free will, and the freedom of choice without losing our oneness, our inner truths, our core, our center and balance point at source. For each and every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. When two opposing halves of a center point interact, they exert forces on each other that are equal in magnitude and opposite in direction, essentially pulling themselves back to center, back into balance. Okay, our guides are wanting me to use a visualization, one that the inner children we have called forth will more easily identify with and understand. A seesaw on a playground. Okay, I can do that. Visualize the center, balance point that is source, the anchor point of the seesaw. Now, visualize the divine masculine, a child sitting on one end of the seesaw, and the divine feminine, another child sitting on the opposing side, both an equal distance from the center anchor point, both with their feet on the ground, supporting their ends, keeping them up off the ground, keeping them in balance with the opposing end. Now, go ahead and visualize one of the children, the one on the divine feminine half, letting go, leaning their energy more towards their emotions and softening their energy and being, allowing their end of the seesaw to lower to the ground, while the opposing one, the divine masculine half, lifts the other child off the ground. Allow yourself to experience that for a moment. Then allow yourself to see the truth that is right in front of you, to see the viewpoint from that lowered feminine end of the seesaw. That shift, that experience you are in, it hasn't made the other half the masculine half cease to exist. It hasn't made that end of the seesaw shorter and yours longer. Nope, it's still there. It's still half of you, even if you are temporarily off balance when it comes to it. See and acknowledge that visualization as the illusion of separation that it is. The illusion that by shifting towards one end or extreme, you are losing part or all of the other. That they are separate from each other, that you will forever be imbalanced. They aren't. You aren't. You won't be. Because of physics. That equal and opposite reaction. Now, what do I mean by that? Visualize the child on the opposing end, the divine masculine end, reacting to being imbalanced, sending their masculine energy towards the feminine end, challenging the imbalance with their masculine energy, with thoughts and a hardening of emotions, pulling the feminine end back up to where both children once again have their feet on the ground, supporting their ends, maintaining the balance. Are you getting it? If you are, I'm sure you realize it already, but that works in the opposite scenario as well. Visualize the child on the masculine side on the ground and the child on the feminine side up in the air. Then visualize the child on the feminine side reacting to being imbalanced, sending their feminine energy toward the masculine end, cleansing the imbalance with their feminine energy, with emotions and a softening of thoughts, pulling the masculine end back up to where both children, once again, have their feet on the ground, supporting their ends, maintaining the balance. This example, this visualization of a seesaw, this is how all thoughts, emotions, and experiences should function. All temporary states should function. Not just our divine masculine and divine feminine halves, but every single thought frequency, every single emotion frequency, every single frequency created by an experience. They all have a center point and opposing ends along their frequencies. Opposite thoughts, opposite emotions, opposite narratives of an experience. This is the point of this episode. Allowing yourself to let go of separation, of duality, to recognize it for the illusion that it is, and to restore balance, oneness. One thought, emotion, and experience at a time, until you reach a frequency where it becomes natural and you just do it without having to think about it, without needing to practice it. That's where I'm at in my journey. All is everything and nothing at the same time, constantly in balance, no matter what thoughts are going through my head, what emotions are going through my being, what experiences I'm having out in the world. And the view, when you can see and create from both sides of the center point without losing balance at that center point, it is a hell of a lot better than the view from being up in the air or down on the ground while imbalanced. I promise. Okay. I don't know if you caught what has happened. but we kind of just touched on two of the three sub-themes at the same time: cleansing and challenging. Cleansing from the feminine side, our feminine half, and challenging from our masculine half. Yeah, that happened. Which I'm guessing means we will be delving a bit deeper into both in episode 17. That today's episode has just been laying the foundation for that discussion of both. Yep, we're going with that. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. It was something. It definitely wasn't the direction I thought it would go in when I sat down to outline it with my team. Or even when I sat down and began recording, 40 minutes ago? But you know what? I like it. I think it worked. I think it flowed as it was meant to. Join us. I'm reminding myself that I released the activation already Thursday. So join us next week for episode 16, which is part 7 of my 6 degrees of soul separation journey, as well as a distance Reiki video reflecting either cleansing or challenging or both, I guess. I don't know. We'll see what my team says then. Then join us once again the following week for episode 17, which will pick up where today's episode left off. Arishkakati.